Dakota Ditcheva says she's fighting this summer. Now, before everybody starts photoshopping posters, betting slips, and YouTube thumbnails with flames behind her head like she just walked out of a Marvel portal, let's slow down for half a second. Because according to Dakota herself, there is an opponent. There is a possible time frame. July seems to be floating around, but there is not a signed contract yet.
Guys, I will be back in the summer. I can't give you an exact date, but I'm gonna say it's July. I'm so excited.
And in combat sports, that last part matters because I have an opponent and the contract is signed are not the same thing. One is a plan, the other is a fight. And if you followed MMA long enough, you know a plan in this sport can disappear faster than a UFC fighter's retirement speech. But this is still a big deal because Dakota Ditcheva has been stuck in that frustrating place every rising star hates. She's ready. The fans are ready. The promotion knows she's valuable, but the momentum has been sitting in traffic with its blinker on. And now, finally, it sounds like the engine is starting again. So today, we're talking about Dakota's expected summer return, the hand injury, the mystery opponent, the Q&A comments about her ground game, and the bigger question nobody can really avoid anymore. Is Dakota Ditcheva about to become the face of PFL's women's divisions, or is she about to outgrow the room? Because that's the interesting part. Not just when she fights, but what happens if she wins the way she usually wins. And that usually involves somebody getting introduced to a left hook, a body shot, or a knee they did not spiritually prepare for. Let's get into it. Dakota Ditcheva has had a strange 12 or so months. Not a bad year exactly, because when you're undefeated, a PFL champion, and still one of the most dangerous and marketable women in combat sports, we are not exactly passing around a casserole and lighting candles. But it has been a frustrating year. She had the win over Sumiko Inaba last July, kept the undefeated record intact, but then came the hand issues. First, she injured one hand in the Inaba fight, and then the other hand was injured while training for her next fight. A showdown with Denise Kielholtz. And for a fighter like Dakota, a hand injury is not a minor footnote. That is not like a golfer saying his lucky visor ripped. Dakota is a striker. That is her identity. That is her currency. That is what gets people to stop scrolling. So when the hands are compromised, everything gets complicated. You can still train, you can still move, you can still drill. But there is a difference between I'm staying in shape and I can punch another professional fighter in the head for 15 minutes without my hand filing a formal complaint. That's the part casual fans sometimes miss. A hand injury for a striker is not just physical. It messes with rhythm, confidence, timing, camp structure, sparring intensity, and most importantly, trust. Because once you've hurt a hand, every hard shot becomes a tiny legal negotiation between your brain and your knuckles. Are we good? Maybe. Can I throw this full power? Let's not get dramatic. That's why her recent comments matter. Dakota says the hands are feeling good. She wants to fight this summer, possibly July, and then again toward the end of the year. That's the kind of schedule she needs. Because Dakota cannot afford to become a once-a-year attraction. Not because she isn't good enough, because she is too good to be hidden. That's the issue. Dakota's career is at the stage where activity matters almost as much as performance. She is undefeated, she is young, she has the looks, the skills, the confidence, the highlight reels, the international appeal. She has the thing promoters pretend they can manufacture in a conference room, but usually can't. Sorry, Sean. She has presence, the it factor. When Dakota walks to the cage, she looks like someone who already knows how the fight is supposed to end. And the dangerous part is, so far, she's usually been right. The Taila Santos fight was the moment a lot of people had to stop calling it hype, because Taila Santos was not some random name thrown into the cage so Dakota could look good. Santos had fought Valentina Shevchenko to a split decision in the UFC. She was experienced, physical, technically sharp, and difficult to finish. Dakota didn't just beat her, she broke her down. That body work was nasty. Not flashy for the sake of being flashy, not spinning nonsense for Instagram engagement. Just clean, cruel, educated damage. Shot selection, timing, pressure, composure. That fight told us something important. Dakota is not just a striker who looks good against overmatched opponents. She can apply that striking against real championship-level opposition. And that brings us to the question she answered recently in her Q&A. A fan asked about her ground game, and Dakota basically said, yes, of course she trains her ground game, but she is known as a striker. She is best at striking, and that's what people want to see. Now, some people will hear that and immediately clutch their pearls. Oh no, she doesn't want to grapple. Relax. That is not what she said. There's a difference between not training grappling and choosing not to lead with it when your biggest advantage is melting people at range. This is where fight fans get weird. We spend years complaining when fighters don't lean into what makes them special. Then when one does, we act like they're hiding something. Dakota knows what she is. That is a good thing. If you're a world-class striker with elite physical tools, nasty body attacks, sharp knees, and real finishing instincts, your job is not to prove to Twitter that you can win a positional grappling exchange in round 1. Your job is to win fights. And if your striking is the clearest path to winning fights, then yes, maybe keep doing the thing that makes opponents look like they accidentally accepted the wrong calendar invite. But, and this is a real but, at some point, the ground game question has to be answered under pressure. Not in training clips, not in Q&As, not in she's working on it conversations, in the cage, against somebody who has no interest in kickboxing with her. That is the next layer of Dakota Ditcheva's story. Because right now, everybody knows the book on her. Do not stand in front of her. Do not let her establish range. Do not let her kick the body. Do not let her build rhythm. Do not let her start smiling. Because once a striker starts smiling in there, bad things are usually already happening. So, what does the next serious opponent do? They wrestle. They clinch. They make it ugly. They force Dakota to fight off the fence. They make her defend takedowns after throwing combinations. They make her work from half guard. They make her scramble. They test whether her confidence stays the same when the fight is no longer clean. Because clean fights favor Dakota. Messy fights are where we learn the rest. That is why the opponent choice matters so much. If PFL gives her Denise Kielholtz, that's an interesting fight because Kielholtz has legitimate striking credentials. She's experienced, she's tough, and she is not going to be intimidated by the idea of a stand-up fight. But stylistically, that may still be a fight Dakota likes because Dakota is bigger, younger, longer, and at this stage, probably sharper in MMA striking transitions. Kickboxing is one thing. MMA striking is another. The gloves are smaller, the cage changes distance, takedown threats change posture, and Dakota's bodywork is built beautifully for MMA. If the fight is Liz Carmouche, that is a very different conversation. Carmouche is not coming to win a beauty contest. She is not there to be a highlight. She is experienced, strong, durable, and knows how to turn a fight into a long day at the office. That kind of matchup answers more questions. Can Dakota manage clinch pressure? Can she maintain distance against someone who is willing to eat one to grab a hold? Can she stay calm if round one is not a showcase? That's the test. And honestly, that might be exactly what Dakota needs. Because at some point, if you are going to be treated like the best flyweight outside the UFC, you need opponents who force the world to believe it, not just opponents who allow the marketing department to keep using words like phenom until they lose all meaning. And I say that with love and with the belief that Dakota is the best female fighter in the world. Combat sports marketing departments treat phenom like hot sauce. They put it on everything. But Dakota is one of the rare fighters where the label actually fits. She is not just undefeated, she has the style that makes people care. That matters. Fans do not just respond to records, they respond to clarity. They want to understand what they are watching. With Dakota, it's clear. She is the striker. She is the finisher. She is the young star. She is the fighter who looks like she's still improving, which is terrifying because she's already making very good athletes look like they took a wrong turn into a striking seminar. But the danger of that kind of rise is expectation. Every fight becomes less about whether she wins and more about how she wins. That is a brutal standard. Win by decision? People ask what went wrong. Get taken down? People act like the blueprint has been discovered. Don't finish a tough opponent? Suddenly the hype train needs maintenance. That is the stupid economy of modern fight fandom. But Dakota seems to understand the assignment. She knows people tune in for her striking. She knows her image is tied to violence with polish. She knows that fans expect the body kicks, the knees, the pressure, the finishes. And there is nothing wrong with embracing that. The best fighters usually have a clear identity. Remember Chuck Liddell and Matt Hughes? You knew what they were going to try and do in the cage before they entered it. And Dakota's identity is not complicated. She wants to hurt you everywhere the referee still allows. The question is whether PFL can build the right road around her. Because this is where it gets delicate. PFL has a star, a real one. But stars need activity, opponents, and narrative. You cannot just pull them out once every several months and say, please clap. Dakota needs a summer fight. Then she needs the end-of-year fight she's talking about. And ideally, those fights need to feel like steps towards something. A title, a super fight, a division-defining matchup, something. Because right now, Dakota is in that weird zone where everyone can see the potential, but the matchmaking has to catch up to the conversation. Chris Cyborg has been discussed. That's a massive name. But we also have to be honest, that is a huge physical and promotional leap. Dakota is a smaller weight. Cyborg has spent her career much bigger. Even if there's talk about catch weights or movement between divisions, that kind of fight has to be built carefully and honestly does not make sense for Dakota. That is Cyborg throwing the biggest name around to see if it sticks. That's not matchmaking. For Dakota, it does not further her cause, other than name recognition on her fighting resume. That's Cyborg looking to get one final big payday before laying her gloves in the ring on her way to retirement. And PFL has to decide what Dakota is right now. Is she the centerpiece of flyweight? Is she a future cross-division attraction? Is she the fighter they build around internationally? Or is she simply the most talented athlete on a roster that still hasn't figured out how to maximize her? Because that last one would be a shame. And frankly, a little too familiar in MMA. This sport has a bad habit of getting a shiny new toy and then leaving it in the box while arguing about broadcast windows, contracts, and whether the cage logo has enough sponsors on it. Dakota should be fighting. Not rushed, not mishandled, but active. But first and foremost, she needs to stay healthy. She is 15-0. She is entering her prime. Her confidence is high, her skill set is exciting. The fans are interested. The media wants to talk about her, and she clearly wants to compete. That is not a puzzle. That is a green light. Now, from a fight perspective, the hand is still the thing to watch. Not because we should panic, but because repeated hand issues can change how a striker fights. Sometimes they become more selective. Sometimes they rely more on kicks. Sometimes the jab becomes more of a rangefinder than a weapon. Sometimes they start overthinking power shots. But with Ditcheva, the interesting part is that her striking game is not just built around headhunting. That helps. She attacks the body beautifully. She uses knees. She kicks. She pressures. She can damage opponents without needing every exchange to end with a full power right hand to the skull. That gives her options while the hand continues to fully rebuild trust. And if she really is feeling good, that makes the summer return even more interesting. Because a healthy Dakota Ditcheva with something to prove is not a relaxing assignment, especially after the layoff. People forget layoffs can create hunger. A fighter who has been stuck watching from the outside does not usually come back politely. They come back trying to remind everybody why the room was quiet when they were gone. And Dakota has a lot to remind people of. She is not just another undefeated prospect. She is a proven tournament champion. She finished Tyler Santos. She has handled pressure. She has already carried expectations. And she has done it while looking like the kind of fighter PFL desperately needs. Marketable, dangerous, young, international, and willing to say just enough to keep people listening without turning into a walking podcast clip. That's rare. So where does this go? Best case scenario, Dakota fights in July, gets a strong opponent like Kielholtz, wins impressively, and then fights again at the end of the year in a bigger matchup. Maybe Carmouche for the title belt, which is something that positions her for a major 2027 run of title defenses. Worst case scenario, the July idea drifts, the contract doesn't get done, the opponent changes, and Dakota spends more time answering questions about when she's fighting than actually fighting. And nobody wants that. Because with Dakota Ditcheva, the sport does not need more mystery. It needs motion. The mystery opponent is fine. The unsigned contract is understandable. The injury recovery is part of the game. But now we need the next chapter. And the next chapter has to do two things. It has to prove Dakota can stay healthy. And it has to move her closer to the kind of fight that answers the only real question left. How great is she? Not how exciting. We know that. Not how marketable. We know that too. How great? Are we looking at a generational talent? Because greatness in MMA is not proven when everything stays in your preferred lane. It is proven when somebody drags you into deep water, kicks the boat away, and asks if you can still swim. Dakota has shown she can strike. She has shown she can finish. She has shown she can handle expectations. Now the next opponent needs to show us what happens when the fight gets uncomfortable. And if Dakota passes that test, then PFL doesn't just have a star. They have a problem for everybody else. Because a striker who can't be bullied, can't be grounded, and can't be broken is a nightmare. And Dakota Ditcheva is getting closer to that conversation. So yes, the summer return would be amazing. July would be ideal. Yes, the contract still needs ink, but the real story is bigger than a date. The real story is whether Dakota Ditcheva is about to restart the climb from promising champion to undeniable force. And if she does come back healthy, sharp, and active, the rest of the division better enjoy the quiet while it lasts. Because when Dakota gets rolling, it doesn't feel like a comeback. It feels like somebody reopening a business that mostly sells body shots and bad evenings. And business might be picking up. Now it's your turn. I want your pick in the comments for what Dakota should do next, who you would like to see her fight, and where you see her career ending up once it is all said and done. I'm Reggie Cross, and this is Behind the Lines. If you're feeling the vibe, hit that subscribe, and remember, hype fades, legacy don't. Peace.
745